And I've been chillin', watching the ocean with you. Baby, up with a slow motion crew. And we up in our clouds when people change.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Masaki. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to look at Diablo Immortal, and I'm going to do a full review of this game. The reason I'm doing this is because for the past month or so, or 2 months, I guess, since the game's been out, I see a lot of reviews that are kind of like swirling around the internet, and I definitely see two distinct perspectives, but I think they're both kind of missing something. So we have the players who like literally played the game for 4 hours. They pretty much know nothing about this game or any games that are like Diablo games, and they're just like, hey, this game's pretty good, go buy this game or whatever, go play this game. And that's really dumb because that's not a good review. Then I see a lot of the other YouTubers who definitely put a lot of time, and they, played the game until it get to about like where they realize it's pay to win. I'm talking about people like probably Asmongold, Belior, these other streamers who are doing their content this way. They got to the pay to win part and they said, hey, this is stopped. It's not for me. And they just felt like this is really not the right thing to do. I want to provide like a tertiary perspective. I think I think I have a unique perspective because I've been, as you can see my channel, like I've been playing mobile games for a while, and I've been playing games that are pretty heavily monetized, like State of Survival. So this isn't really new to me. And as a mostly free-to-play player for these mobile games, and someone who's put in like serious time to really understand the systems of the games, I think for me, it's really interesting to also look at the differences for a game like Diablo Immortal. And I've put actually substantial time into this game as well. So I'm currently Paragon level 121, I think. And my server Paragon is 122. So I'm pretty close to the server Paragon. And honestly, the only reason I'm a little bit below that level now is because I haven't been able to put in some time to like play in the last couple of days. So obviously the server Paragon level goes up every day. So that's mostly why I'm behind. And lastly, I just want to be like pretty fair about the game. Again, from a perspective of somebody who both plays PC games as a kid all through my life, but also now mostly playing a lot of mobile games. So first, we're going to talk about gameplay. Let's separate it into pros and cons. For pros, I think this game is really crisp on PC or mobile. Like, its action's really fast. It feels good to play your character. It moves nicely. The combat, the skills, all the pieces, the animations look very smooth. So that's really nice. And it's a kind of a nice separation from a lot of other mobile games where it does feel like it's very laggy, or there's just some sort of disconnect between when you hit the button to when the action happens. This game definitely feels a lot more crisp. And you can enjoy it in piecemeal. This part I actually appreciate the most. I know there's a lot of hardcore gamers who are like, I don't want to play on a phone. But the reality of a lot of other people in this world is they're not professional gamers. So we don't have time to always sit in front of a TV or a computer and play games all the time. And sometimes we're just normal people. Like, you might be on the bus, on the commute, and you have like 20 minutes to burn. So you pull out your phone and you play some games, right? And the fact that you can enjoy Diablo piecemeal feels really nice, because honestly, that's what I've been wanting to do since maybe like as a kid. I remember going to my friend's house and to play Diablo 2, because you can't really, there's no I guess we didn't have smartphones back then, so that wasn't even an option. The action is really fun. So this is another pro. The monsters are kind of exciting to kill, and the boss fights are actually pretty interesting. And you kind of learn the mechanics pretty fast. So there are a lot of bosses, and they do have different mechanics. Now, if you are way over geared or over leveled for a boss, you pretty much don't have to play by the mechanic. But there is a point where your gear and your level is about right with the boss, and that makes it really, really nice. And that makes a really nice balance where you do have to play around the mechanics of the boss. The sense of the large world is really nice and is present. What I mean by this is, you go to town like West March, and there's a ton of players all over the place. They're running around. We're all chatting. I think there's like 7 or 8 different channels. People are always posting things like, hey, looking for party, looking for a group to do this, content, that content. The Alliance is very active. Those are all really good pieces that makes the game feel really like active, really the sense of a larger world that you're part of. I like that part a lot. You can probably group with other people really easily. There are multiple ways to do this, like multiple group finder systems. You can post party systems, request, those kind of things. That's really nice. It's really nice to have that option. And gear in general is pretty easy to come by. And you always feel like you're progressing as long as you know what content to grind. So that part is good. You do have to do a little bit of homework to know where your set pieces are or where the legendary mobs drop, etc. And what content kind of rewards you the most versus the ones that are not really worth your time. Legendary and set items are in the game, and they're possible to acquire for any player, right? It's not a pay-to-win type of option. That would suck if you can only get legendary gear if you are paying for the game. You don't have to pay, and you can actually get a decent amount of legendary gear. In fact, after about 2 months of playing, and realistically about a month of playing on my Demon Hunter, at this point, I have pretty much all the pieces I really need. I think there's like one more headpiece I need for something, but otherwise everything is already in place. So the cons, right? The game is pretty short. So if you're kind of here for the main story, main quest, there's not much there, honestly. The story is short. The story is also really bad. So about 2 days worth of casual playing, you'll probably be through all the content. That's about 12 hours of gameplay. And I would say that's about inclusive of everything you can kind of do in the game too, content wise. Yeah, the game will get really grindy as you get into higher Paragon levels. So as soon as you hit Paragon, pretty much the game I think slows down by a lot because your gear upgrades aren't going to be every item, and I think that's actually pretty normal, but I know it gets grindier. Where I'm at right now in Hell 3, H3, yeah, Hell 3, the set items don't actually drop as frequently. So like I've had other guild members who literally grind 20 dungeons and they don't even get a single piece of set item. And that really sucks because, you know, not only do you need the set item to drop, you need the right piece to drop. So it does take a lot of grinding dungeons for. Luckily, the dungeons are only like 5 minutes to do the run. If you have a group that's capable and know what to do, maybe even faster than that. 3 minutes probably could be done as well. So that's not too bad. The content beyond the main story quest is kind of fluff, right? So there is a lot to do, don't get me wrong, but you have to kind of like it's just more for you to grind. And it's kind of like for you to grind and level gear, and it's just built in place for you to kind of feel like, hey, this sense of everything slowing down. And obviously you can progress through a lot of this much quicker if you have better gear. But honestly, you know, if you're paying for better gear, you would just hit another wall later. So remember, this thing is an infinite wall all the way upwards. Like hell levels can go as deep as like 7, 8. So you're looking at like 450 to 500 Paragon levels above. So it's not like you can just speed through all the way to the end of the game anyways. And you're going to be doing this grind forever because you have to upgrade your gear after you get into every single hell level. And after every single, like what I would call like separation of Paragon levels, you do have to grind new gear. So that makes it a little bit tough. I think as another con, there's just too many systems to keep track of. This is pretty common for mobile games in general. And the idea is, you know, more systems usually means more content. That's just, again, fluff content for you to be involved with, for you to be a part of. That also means more opportunity for you to spend if you have content that you're, you know, troubling. The other part of it is also hooking. So they use different content to hook you. Like that's why you have like daily quests, weekly quests, things like that. These kind of content are built into the game to kind of make you addicted to the game, right? And that's real. That's how these games work. So, and they give you a real sense of FOMO when you don't do them because you feel like you're missing out some piece of the game because you haven't done that content for that week or you haven't maxed X, Y, Z thing. So that's mostly why they're there. Some of the later content requires a full party. Small con, but I don't like the fact that after H2, Hell 2, you do have to have a full party of 4 to do any of the content, whether it be hidden layers, whether it be dungeons, raids, those kind of things require 8. It just makes it like tough because you do have to get a full group. Sometimes if you are way behind your server, maybe it's harder to get a group, which can be kind of annoying actually. After a while, the game doesn't really feel really rewarding. And, you know, like I said, like one of my buddies went 20 plus dungeon runs without a direct upgrade. And you are pretty pretty walled off hard from more difficult content. So what I mean by that is there is a core system to kind of like how strong your character is. It's called combat rating, or CR. And the idea is that if your combat rating is below a certain tier, so they have, like, for example, for health 3, I think the combat rating requirement is like 2120, which means if your gear score doesn't add up to 2120, the content in health 3 actually is more difficult for you than others, which basically makes it so that you have to do more with less, or you have to spend more. Basically, you'll run around and you will get a debuff on your character where you take more damage and you deal less damage. So there's a lot of enemies that can one-shot you, and it's only because you haven't hit that hard cap of 2120. So think of it just like as a gear check or hard cap. I don't like that system, but I can see why they put it in place. But that does mean that sometimes if you don't get your needed upgrades, then you may not be able to do the harder content. I've noticed this recently, but set items are getting harder to grind as you raise up in hell level. So that's a little bit of a bummer, where basically imagine like if you're in hell 1, your set drop rate will be, let's just, again, these are fluff numbers. I don't know their actual percentages. Say 50% of the runs, you'll get a set item. Okay. Once you get into hell 2, it becomes more like 40-ish%, something like that. And then once you get to hell 3, maybe it's like 20%. So it gets harder and harder, or more and more rare to drop set items. And then there's another problem, which is in hell 1 and 2, you pretty much can get, I guess in hell 1. In hell 1, you get like a choice of 2 set items. So each dungeon can only drop 1 of 2 set items, right? And then in hell 2, those become 4. So essentially, if you're looking for the specific piece, your chance of getting that piece of set item has actually went down from like 50%, instead of, let's say, 50% for 2 items, so like 25% each percentage wise, it has become 40%, but for 4 items, so realistically like 10% to get the one that you need. And if you then take that to like health 3, where only 20% of the time it drops set items and there are still 4 items, well, now it's like 5% drop rate, right? So I have noticed that it has gotten a lot harder to get a set item in health 3. And even when I do, it's like not the one I would need or something like that. So it makes it really tough because you do have to run more times, and it's very grindy that way. In general, that's the pros and cons of gameplay. So let's move on to classes. The classes of Diablo are actually pretty nice. I do think that the classes are well done. They are very varied and they're different. The classes play drastically differently. Some classes are more support oriented and other classes are more damage oriented. It's pretty straightforward. For my personal review here, I have tried both the Barbarian and Demon Hunter extensively. I've played a little bit of the Crusader and a little bit of the Necromancer. And I think those 2 classes also play very interestingly as well. And so, I mean, the thing about Crusader as an example is Crusader a lot of times is the support character or support class, because they are kind of, they have a lot of buffs for the team, but they can also wreck a lot of face. So they have ways to do a ton of damage as well. So it's an interesting class, and you can build it differently based on what you're looking for. The other thing about class is that recently, as of the latest patch, they have added a feature for you to change class once a week for free without losing any progress. Essentially, what they do is they kind of, since all gear is bound to a specific class, you will not have the gear back. I guess the gear kind of fall off your body because they're for, let's say, Barbarian, and you're now a Crusader. However, they will, in its place, give you equivalent stat gear. They don't have the special effects. So legendary items in the game will modify your skills. So you're not going to get the legendary items with the skill modifications, but you'll still have the old stats. So you won't feel super nerfed, and you can probably farm up the old legendaries fairly quickly. So it's not too much of a nerf to switch a class, and you won't feel too far behind. So highly recommend you try it if that's something that's interesting to you. So no Diablo review can be complete without talking about gear. Gear is pretty core to all Diablo games. It's all about getting loot. It's all about getting gear. In general, gearing in Immortal feels pretty good, right? Legendary gear will modify your skills, and kind of give you a lot of build variants that are interesting, right? So for example, as a demon hunter, there are legendaries that change my sentry skills to shoot a bomb instead of arrows. Sometimes it'll change my arrows to shoot fire or ice arrows, and that could freeze. It may give me more damage while I'm using vengeance, etc. So there's a lot of weird changes it can make to your skills. I think one of the most interesting one is I recently picked up a helmet which allows me to do higher chance of critical damage while in vengeance, but it also deals damage to me. So this helmet is really great for if you're doing PvE content, but in PvP, it's actually fairly dangerous because you can kill yourself fairly easily using this helmet. Just as an example of something that is really, really interesting as far as like gearing and skill variation. Legendary items do also drop fairly frequently. I mean, they're not like, super hard to get. I remember in Diablo 2, it's like, you would probably farm for like hours and maybe get one legendary. In this game, definitely doesn't feel that way. You can probably farm for about 20-30 minutes and you should at least get one, if not more. There's a lot of content that will reward you legendaries straight out from the quest rewards. Again, random. They're not like the fixed legendaries, but there's a lot of content will reward you with legendary. So it's not really that hard to farm up all the legendaries you need. Set items in the game also grant extra bonuses that modify your gameplay. So basically something like you collect two of the set pieces and they grant like faster movement speed or more damage while you're not moving, like a bunch of things that might modify your gameplay. Obviously you're going to be reading the skills to figure out which set items are built for your character. And there are obvious things like there's a summoner set item that's really good for probably necromancers, but may not be really great for somebody like demon hunter who doesn't summon a lot of things. Yeah. So basically, in general, like there's a lot of consideration to be taken into consideration when picking up like your loadouts for different content. I think my only gripe with the loadout system right now is that because gearing is so important and stats are on the gear itself, while you can change your items, so legendaries, for example, have this system called inherent. And what you can do is you can extract the essence of a legendary weapon. What that means is basically that special skill modification ability is now taken off of legendary and put into like a storage area. And you can, for the same type of legendary, basically convert any legendary, let's say a armor piece, chest piece, into any other legendary with that skill. So meaning you can change the skill on it without changing the stats, which is really nice because you can pick like a better statted item and then now modify the skill to match what you're doing for your build. My only gripe with this system is that it doesn't let you kind of save the loadout and then be able to quickly change that before content. What I would love to see is the ability to say, since you can just change them beforehand, it just takes a little bit more time. It would be nice if you could save a loadout for, let's say, something like PvP and save another loadout for PvE. And somebody can just kind of go and load the loadout instead of having to go to the vendor to make all the inherent modifications before doing some other content. That'd be really nice. All right, so along the same lines, let's talk about skills. The skill system is pretty interesting and it's nicely varied. All skills can, again, be further modified by legendary items, sometimes more than one, and that can actually really create some interesting combinations for your skills or your builds, etc. Different skills are for different content, obviously. There are skills that are obviously better for PvP. There are ones that are better for PvE. There are better ones for like boss killing. There are better ones for escaping. But at the same time, all classes are going to get some subset of things like crowd control skills, like stunning, slowing, etc. Movement skills, so you can kind of pass through enemies or escape. And it kind of feels good and balanced for both PvE and PvP. And what I mean by that is like in PvP skills, for example, like CCing, crowd controlling, or movement skills where you can evade are very valuable, right? Way more valuable sometimes than even like a damage skill. In fact, in most PvP, you really only need one, maybe two high damage, high DPS skills. And the rest of it should be for evasion, for stunning. Those are very important skills. Whereas in PvE, content, you're mostly looking for high DPS skills. You're not really looking for evasion unless it's bosses where you're trying to like dodge attacks, etc. So that's what I like about the skills of this game. In general, all the classes have access to all the tools you need. At the same time, it doesn't feel like anybody has a huge advantage over another class. So that's nice. All right, so let's talk about story. Diablo Immortal story is just honestly pretty bad for a Blizzard game. Blizzard has been known in the past for really, really, really good narrative moments, really great storylines, but this game is pretty bare bones as far as stories goes. In general, the story is like, collect a bunch of things, destroy this thing, okay, collect more things, destroy this thing. Oh no, the enemy found out we were trying to do something. They flipped the table, so we have to flip the tables back, etc. It really feels super generic. And one of the problems I have with the story is you don't really care for the characters, right? As an example, I remember inside the Dark Woods, you find like this dad who dies, and he's like, hey, go find my daughter. You find the daughter, and you try to like take her or rescue her out of the village, but like 5 minutes later, she gets killed by the enemy. And so it's kind of like supposed to be a very, very emotional, sacrificial moment where, oh man, like this daughter sacrificed her life to save your life or something. But honestly, I just didn't care. Like, I barely met her. I don't even remember her name. So what's the point of this character? There's a lot of moments like that. And in fact, like most of the quests, most of the side quests, they all end up this way, where like I remember there's like one side quest where you try to help some guy like find some lure so he can bait this gigantic like sea monster out that whatever did something to him. The problem is he dies, right? And he says, I think at the last line he says, I don't care if I die, but make sure you kill this monster. And it's kind of like, sure, but I also just don't care about you. Like, you're dead and bye. Like, there's a lot of that. So I think really the narrative moment kind of missed a lot for me. At the beginning, I was watching a lot of the cutscenes. I was kind of reading all the text and listening to the storyline. Towards the end, I just didn't care. I just pressed the skip button all the time because it was wasting my time. I'd rather just be killing monsters and getting my items. I don't care about the story. And this is really a shame because like Diablo stories, I found were really good. I mean, I remember playing Diablo 1 as a little kid, and I would like listen to all the little like background story of Leoric, the Butcher, those kind of things. I would like listen to what like I think what's her name, like Ashara, talk to me about like medicine. She's like the traveling witch, right? Who turned out to be evil, by the way. Spoiler. Those kind of things, right? Those things actually were interesting, mattered a lot, but in this game they just don't matter. And it's really sad because I know there's a lot of artists that put in a lot of work, and probably even people who did all the sound narration, things like that. They probably put in a lot of work to kind of flesh out the story. You know, like so many games, all they do is just like a bunch of words on screen. They don't, do fully voice acted lines, but Diablo actually has quite a bit. I think the entire main story quest is fully voice acted, but all for what purpose though? Because you don't care about the characters. You don't care about any of the parts of the story. Like, there's no payoff, right? You can't have a character that comes into the game and then leaves the game within 5 minutes and you are supposed to care about this character. That doesn't happen. It's not possible. So story is total fail. All right, I know this is probably the part that everyone is waiting for. So let's get to it. Let's talk about the pay to win of this game. Because it's a mobile game, there will always be a section of we have to talk about pay to win, right? So TLDR, is Diablo Immortal pay to win? Absolutely yes. No question about it. Absolutely pay to win. Everything that Blizzard has said on their like Twitter or whatever, it's all lies. It's insane that they even try to mask it and say it's not pay to win. It's absolutely pay to win. Okay. So with that aside, pay to win doesn't mean that the game is bad. Pay to win actually could be a good game, a decent game, etc. So let's first talk about how it's pay to win, and we'll talk about whether that's a good thing or bad thing. So basically, the core of Diablo that's pay to win is legendary gems, right? It's kind of like the ultimate ways to power up your character because there's a resonance. So we'll kind of put that on the side. There's this extra stat called resonance, and then there is also a CR, combat rating boost. So every gem comes with a combat rating boost. It's kind of minor, like 18, 20 points. I say it's minor, but it's also not minor, because a lot of legendary items, when you do upgrades, that's what you're looking for, like 20, 30 points anyway. So it's basically, imagine if you're getting another like legendary item, right, as an upgrade. And then there's another thing called resonance. Resonance basically is a specific stat that boosts all of your core stat by that percentage. Say, for example, you have 100% resonance, then all your stats are doubled, right? If you have 300%, it's tripled, etc. So, or quadrupled, whatever. So like it basically it's a straight boost for all of your stats. That is insanely good, right? Because if you think about it, like you have, let's say 100 strength, you have 100 resonance, you have 200 strength now. So you basically had gained 100 points of combat rating for free. Yeah, so the resonance piece is definitely crazy. The other part too is, as a free player, you will get some gems, right? But the gems you get are what they call 1 star or 2 stars, right? Then they have these gems called 5-star gems, which are basically anywhere between 2 stars, 3 star, 4 star, and 5 stars. So think of it like it's a 5-star gem, which means it has a potential to be 5 stars, but it's starting out as a 2 star. So, it's like 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, etc. The stats on these gems are better. There is always all the gems have a special kind of like modifier. Think very similar to set item boosts or legendary modifiers. They give you something, like usually it's like on hit or on attack, it'll grant you something, right? But these grants are pretty strong. There's like ones that, for example, create another shadow clone of yourself, right? Echoing Shade, it's called. And what this thing does is basically, if you think about it, it's a shadow clone. It's going to be dumb. It's not going to use the best skills, but it will use something. So essentially, if you have one of these things, then it kind of like effectively about doubles your damage, right? That's pretty freaking good. Just as another like kind of a side skill of this gem, right? There are other ones that are like just straight up boost damage by X amount of percent, or adds like poison debuff on kill or on attack, and if on kill, it kind of like infects other creatures. These are all some of the really, really good gems. The problem and why this is pay to win is because there is no normal way to get these legendary gems, especially these like what I call 5-star gems, right? Because the 5-star gems basically require you to grind something called Elder Rift, and you won't get gems normally by just killing or doing the Elder Rift. You have to do the Elder Rift with a legendary crest, and these crests are mostly purchased through basically real money, like real world money, right? So you basically buy in-game currency or packs or loot boxes, whatever, and they give you crests, and you use these crests to do the Elder Rift, which then will yield you the gems that you want. Now, the gems are also don't drop like 100% drop the 5-star, the good gems. Sometimes those drop crappy gems. So you kind of have to feed a lot into the system to be able to get some of the good gems out. In addition, even if it drops a nice gem for you, you still have to power it up through like ranking up the gem to unlock all the skills, right? On the skill boosts on the gem. And these boosts are crazy insane for the 5-star gems. Here's an example. As a 1-star gem, your rank up cost for the 1-star gem is going to be like 5 essence. So essence you can get by grinding other legendary gems. So like recycling them basically into this gem. For a 2-star gem, you're looking at using about, I think, 10 or 15 for just the first rank. But if you're looking at a 5-star gem, just a 2-star, 5-star gem, for the first rank, you have to put in 50 essences. As an example, that's 50 1-star gems, or about like 12 or 13 2-star gems. That's insane, right? That's a lot of essence, and you won't be able to get that kind of essence just playing the game for free, because the game doesn't give you enough legendary crests for you to be able to go and get a bunch of gems to then even put into a one of these gems that you've, let's say, somehow got lucky and farmed out. So basically the game caps you on this. And you'll notice all the pay-to-win players will have really, really nice, a full set of like legendary gems, and they'll have those gems kind of beefed up by a lot, right? So whether they are higher start level, say, let's say 4 stars out of 5, or they're also higher rank, which will give them a lot more boost, you'll notice that their stats, it's not just the stat you see on the gem, but the resonance, which is kind of like hidden from you as another player, is much higher, which means they're doing more damage, they're taking less damage, they have higher health, etc. All of their stats are boosted. And that's really, really crazy. Now, Diablo will say, doesn't matter, the gems are just another small piece, you get everything else. But the reality is, when they make legendary items very easy to get, when they make everything reasonable to get, the only thing that's going to make the difference between the pay-to-win players and the free-to-play is the legendary gems. And they make a huge difference. I mean, if they just add, let's say, 20 strength, sure, it doesn't matter too much. But the fact is, like, for example, a 5-star gem, right, at a 2-star level at rank 1, if you boost it to rank 2, it goes from 30 resonance, on the surface it looks normal, to 110 resonance. So that gem, by boosting just one rank, will grant you almost like 3 times or 4 times the power. That's insanely good. And your 1-star and 2-star gems will not be able to do that. So that's why this game is pay to win. And the only way to get these gems is by paying real money into it. And how much money does it cost? Well, if you want to run what they call 10 crested Elder Rift, which basically means you put 10 legendary crests in, you're looking at about like $20 to $25, right? Depending on what packs you buy, depending on, of course, all the in-game currency, they don't translate directly from like US dollars to number of crests you get. You have to buy like some sort of in-game currency. You might get it as part of a package, which makes it a little cheaper, etc. All this other, mechanics and schemes that they put in place to disambiguate the money you're spending from what you're getting inside the game. Anywho, the legendary gems that you get and the ability to power them up much stronger than other players will essentially separate the free-to-play players from the pay-to-win players by a lot. I mean, the margin, just as a example, you are probably looking at if somebody pays a decent amount of money into the game, they would be 2 to 3 times more powerful than you, even if you guys have the same Paragon level, same gear level. The power difference of those legendary gems is huge. So that's pretty much where you're going to look at for this. Where does this come into effect? Mostly in PvP, it's going to be a problem. There's PvP as in like you just get into a battleground, you fight. Then there's PvP in the sense of like what we call Shadow War, which is kind of like the game's version of how you pit the players against each other. So different alliances fight each other. Obviously, for something like this, the alliance that spends more money will essentially win. Yes, there is some consideration for number of players or for how geared the players are, but honestly, if they spend more money, they're going to be doing a ton of damage. Having more players won't really affect that too much. So yeah, essentially, if the alliance with more geared players are going to win. So yeah, that's where the play to win elements really come in. Aside from that, like really just kind of farming world content, it really doesn't matter too much, as it's kind of like for PvE, who cares if somebody goes over and kills a boss faster in my party? I mean, honestly, it just makes my life a little easier because it's kind of like me being carried. So that part I don't worry about too much, but it really, the PvP elements is where this makes it unfair. So is Diablo Immortal's pay to win a big problem? I think if you really care about like the clan fighting system and claiming immortal, which in this game is basically, if you think about like top 3 alliances type of thing, if you care about that system and care about that system being fair, absolutely affects your gameplay. If you care about PvP, then absolutely it does affect your gameplay. But if you just really want to do it for world content and grind things out, I don't think it matters too much. If you just like, killing monsters and getting legendary loot, I don't think it matters too much. I mean, maybe aside from the fact that like sometimes you might get kicked out of a dungeon group because you're not well geared, those kind of things. But otherwise, most of the content you do, it won't even come up. So that is the nice part about the pay to win system of Diablo Immortal, for now at least. Who knows what changes in the future. So let's now talk about grind. Grind is another one of those things that really make, I think, a lot of games kind of tedious for a lot of players. I do think that no doubt Diablo Immortal is very grindy, but I think that's actually pretty normal for a Diablo game. So maybe the expectations have to be set in place. My main issue with the grind of the Diablo Immortal game is that there's just too many systems. I don't really mind killing the same enemy over and over and over again, because I felt like that's the Diablo game loop in general, is you do that. Maybe you do that with a little bit of variation, but mostly it's the same, right? The issue with the Diablo Immortal grind is that you get FOMO for not doing content. There's a lot of content out there. I mean, there's like your weekly content, there's your daily content, there's bi-weekly content, all the stuff that you keep track of on a daily basis. And you really feel like you're missing out if you don't do some of the content. So as an example, like here's how many daily contents you have, right? You have 8 bounties you have to do a day, 3 side quests, 3 PvP sessions you have to do for rewards, 1 vault run for your clan points, but realistically you want to do vault runs for the week and number of chests to open for the vaults. By the way, I'm just ratting off a lot of things. If you play the game, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, just understand these are all different things that players are doing on a day-to-day basis. You have to do your daily like battle point items, which basically fill up your battle pass. You have 120 points of battle pass to do for special 3 chest rewards, which, to be fair, like you don't have to worry about it too much because everything else you do will kind of feed those points. You have to do your 1 Sanctum run for your Eben, whatever, Farad Sanctum buffs. You have to do 3 Elder Rifts for extra rewards, 4 Assembly Blessings a day that you have to tend and kind of just spend about like 15-20 minutes. 3 bestiary pages, which means like 30 monster essences, which takes quite a bit of time to farm out. Like you can do all of your bounties and still get like maybe not even a page. Yeah, that one definitely takes a long time. You have to do your at least one Dark Clan contract for that day. Sometimes the days will be 3, especially on reset weeks. You're going to do 3 for that day. And then your bi-weekly or weekly quests, like, have to do your raids. So those are bi-weekly, I believe. Your vault chests and hilts for vault have caps, so you do want to hit the caps every week. Along the same lines, Elder Rifts have embers, which you want to hit the cap every week, because the ember system is the only way for free-to-play players to get extra 5-star gems, or possibility of a 5-star gem that's tradable on the auction house. There's like battle pass quests that refresh, your vendors that you have to keep buying from, etc. So tons and tons and tons of systems. Now, Blizzard probably will argue that these systems give the players choice and options and gameplay and things to do, but honestly, it's just a lot of tedious tasks. And this is probably the worst part about Diablo Immortal for me. The pay to win, I don't really care too much, but the grindiness is really annoying. Like I don't want to, go in the game and feel like I have to do a job. And especially my nature, I'm a very completionist type of person, so I really feel there's a huge drag on me to do all the content, because I feel like I'm missing if I don't do them. Which, honestly, that's a lot on me. And but still, the game is very manipulative in that way, so I don't appreciate that. All right, so progression. Let's talk about progression. Progression is important for any game, right? But it's even more for Diablo games. Overall, the progression does feel pretty good. What I mean by that is like, every couple runs, you'll get item upgrades, you will get level ups, which you can spend skills, points on Paragon skills, etc. Early game, pretty much the progression is super fast. You're going to feel like everything's, every item you pick up will replace an item you're probably wearing. So that's great. Around level 48, the game slows down, and the progression really focuses around legendary items around that time. And of course, once you hit Paragon level 1, so that's level 60, which is max level, you're basically looking for like set items in H1 and more legendary for progression. And this loop basically repeats for every single hell level. So in H1, you try to hit a certain mark, which is that combat rating number we're talking about, to go to Hell 2. Once you hit Hell 2, you hit a different mark to go to Hell 3, and so on and so forth. Right now on my server, most people are still in Hell 3, looking to go into Hell 4. But some people already made it into Hell 4, and they're doing that content now. The leveling is really easy, which I like. And there's this catch-up system called Server Paragon. Basically, there's a server level, right? So every day the server level goes up by 2. And if you're below that number, then you get a experience boost. And if you're above that number, you get an experience cap. And the whole idea here is that you make it so that handicap, sorry, not a cap. So you make it so that everybody is about the same level on the server. I think that's a good idea in general, because also the Paragon levels also dictate what kind of gear you get, like the stats on the gear. So it's, you have to have a higher Paragon level to be able to have better statted gear, which increases your combat rating, etc. So that's how the entire progression is gated through that system there. Set items and legendary items are pretty fast in the game. You're going to get them a lot. I think when I was doing Hell 2 content, I felt like I was getting set items really, really fast. So I could farm out a whole set maybe 1 to 2 days. So that's really nice. And a lot of that then becomes you farm out like better versions of that same set to kind of improve. Or you might do a combination of 2 sets, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of progression there. And of course, lastly, it's just going to be legendary gems progression. And we already talked about that in the pay to win section. But in general, for a free to play player, it's a pretty slow uphill progression for that. So yeah. And there's a lot of other mini games you can progress through, like Path of Blood, your like Challenger Rifts, your like Shadows levels, the Sanctum, the Heliquary. These are all different little systems that you can play. They all grant small boosts here and there. So I don't really try to focus and say, hey, grind out these systems. What you do is basically you do the other content and it kind of feeds you to do this content too. So you're just going to get Heliquary progress, for example, without really trying too much, as long as you do your raids every week. Most of the progression in the game does boil down to combat rating though. So this dictates kind of like what content you can actually play. Because again, like I said before, there's a major handicap if you're below a certain CR. It's kind of like a gear check, and that's the point of the game. So just to understand, combat rating is the progression gap here. As far as PvP progression goes, it's basically ranking based on wins, based on how you perform inside your battlegrounds. Honestly, I do pretty well for a free-to-play player because I have strategy most of the time for what I do. But again, legendary gems will kind of boost that by a lot. So if you're not pay to win, I would say don't even worry too much about PvP progression, as it's not something that's really for you. So overall progression is like a mixed bag, right? There are parts that are excellent. I think they're great, but and basically I still get chills whenever I get a big upgrade for my legendary item, and that's really good. And at the same time, because legendary gems are so locked behind a paywall, it really makes it feel slow and grindy. Now, I know Diablo games are meant to be grindy. You're supposed to be grinding out dungeons. But there's a difference between me spending time and effort and getting real rewards from something that's just like effectively unattainable. And I want to make a comparison between this and something like State of Survival, which I also put a lot of time into. As a free player in that game, I know I won't be able to get like the best of whatever heroes of every single, season, rank, etc. But at the same time, I can get a fairly good version of that hero, right? Now, in that game, it's actually more unfair because it's either the best wins or you're just not good enough. So you do have to max everything because everyone else is expected to max everything. So if your heroes are not maxed, you're just going to lose. But at the same time, though, it's not like you don't have access to the hero. In Diablo Immortal, it does feel like some of the gems are just outside of your access. You may play for a year or two and never get a blood-soaked jade, which is like the most sought-after legendary gem. And that kind of sucks, right? That you can play for so long and literally never be able to acquire an item. Sure, you can probably buy it with platinum, but once you get it, also you have problems with like ranking it up. There's a lot of just feel bads in the game. And it's not like, it's so easy. Like there's only one rank, or once you do that thing, then this thing is maxed out. The legendary gem like progression system is huge. Even as a paying player, I would think that you have to down like a lot of money to max out things like gems. And even then, like, so what's the harm for Blizzard to kind of like catch everybody up? Basically, essentially, a lot of games that are pay to win, they do have systems that try to keep their free to play players about like average or slightly below average. And this is a very normal thing that most games will do. I don't see this in Diablo Immortal for the legendary gem system, and I don't understand why, because it's really not like if you give every player a choice of certain gems, but give the pay to win players like a better version of that gem, that's really not going to destroy anything. But for a free to play player to almost feel like they can never obtain a certain gem, it's almost like one part of the game is just locked out for them unless they pay money. And I don't think that's very good for the game or fair. All right, so what about the end game? Is there stuff to do in Diablo after you hit like Paragon? Absolutely yes. So there's a ton of end game content. Basically, you're always looking to increase your combat rating through one means or another. You can grind out dungeons, you could do PvP, you could do a bunch of clan things. I do actually enjoy some of the contracts you can do. They're just kind of like side quest content type of things, and they're pretty nice. There's a bunch of like world bosses you can kill as well. Some will come on a specific schedule, so it's nice that you can't like always access certain bosses. There's even like kind of like a battleground, a battle royale battleground where the last survivor gets to open a chest. It's really cool. Like there's a lot of these little systems I do enjoy. One of the problem though is that the rewards for these in-game content suck. Like, I mean, there are some, like I think the Ancients in Tundra does drop pretty nice items because you can kind of like trade. You can make them basically give you like 10 sets of rare drops, so sometimes they'll drop a legendary. The issue with that is like there's a lot of content like side quests that just doesn't reward with almost anything good. So it's literally laughable because the game is just rewarding a bunch of players a bunch of like fodder items, which kind of sucks. And then of course especially when you have a hard cap on combat rating, I think if the game removed the combat rating requirements for different like difficulty levels, that might meaning I think they could still have the recommendations, but don't make it so that if you're below the recommended combat rating that the players get a debuff. If you do that, I think it will make it really interesting where players who have some amount of skill can try to do the harder challenging content with like a glass cannon character, for example, right? A glass cannon character essentially is somebody who has no defense and it's all about attack. And so you can imagine somebody who's fairly skilled, have good evasion skills, can try to hit harder content and be able to kill monsters really, really fast, but obviously suffer the consequences of being one shot, right? And in that way, they can maybe grind better gear faster. And it's just, I think, more interesting, opens up a lot more options. I don't like the fact that they literally handicap you, like where I think it's like if you're over 200 points below the combat rating recommendations, you take like 100%, 200% more damage. It's insane. So like it basically makes the content really unplayable for you. Yeah. There's also a lot of weird gates in the game. What I mean by that is like they limit or cap things. And this is what really makes this game a mobile game, right? For example, there's like a chest that you open that has a 5-second cooldown timer on it. I have no clue why that timer exists because you're only allowed to farm 3 of these chests a day anyways. So there's really no case where somebody's like, quickly clicking through and opening like 3 chests in succession, and that's a problem for the game. You're only allowed to play certain content at a certain time. I think this is done to help with like player activity, but again, it just feels like a gate to me. What I mean is like PvP isn't open 24/7. It only opens in 2-hour sessions every like 2 to 4 hours or so. So it is throughout the day, but you have a couple sessions to do PvP. There are a lot of like game caps that are not super obvious to the players, right? There's obvious ones. For example, bestiary. They'll tell you can have like 3 pages you can do for bestiary. But there's a bunch of things like the side quests will reward a chest, but that chest has a cap on it because after a certain amount, that chest basically doesn't drop anything good anymore, or there's no chest or whatever. Players stated that there feels at least like a soft cap on legendary items per day. I feel the same way too, but Blizzard has said that doesn't exist, so I don't think they would lie about something like that. So, but at the same time, it's something that people say. The latest one I hit, which is like a harder level content like H3, they've nerfed the set item drops, and I don't know why they're doing this, because it's really not necessary. With more set items per dungeon, we have to run more dungeons anyway, so there's really no need to, in addition to do that, also nerf the drop rates of those dungeons. Kind of sucks though. Yeah, so there's a bunch of little caps like that. There's like caps on fading embers, which is like, I mean, I think it's like, if you calculate how many runs you do, I think you have to do like, let's see, like 50 runs of Elder Rifts, which take about 3 minutes each, 2 to 3 minutes each. And then that will yield you enough to trade in for like one of the legendary gems, right? That's tradable. Well, that's capped on a weekly basis. So you can't just do that infinitely. You do have to do it like, only basically once, 50 runs per week, right? That sucks. You're not getting that much Ember, and 50 runs is a lot of time for legendary gem. I think you should just release the cap on that and let people grind. I don't know why there's a cap on something like that. Yeah, it shouldn't exist, right? Things like that just shouldn't exist. Yeah. So anyways, basically for a free-to-play player, you will feel a lot of caps on the game, which I guess in a positive light, it's nice, because then you just, once you hit cap, you don't do the content, and it saves you time until next week. I don't know. Like, yeah. I think for the caps, the last point I'll add here, I wish the game just allows you to do what you want to do, right? For example, if you really, really enjoy running like contracts like I do, let you run infinite contracts and keep rewarding for the contracts. I don't know why there's like only one contract allowed per day. Why? I mean, the contracts take a lot of time to finish. You should give some good rewards after they finish and then be done with it and continue to do that. I would rather see that every single content they have in the in-game just allows you to run it infinitely, not capping the rewards, not capping on how many times you can run it, and let the only cap be the fact that there's 24 hours in a day and a player can only play for a certain amount of those hours, right? And that's it. So they're going to pick and choose the content they want to play and not be forced into playing different content to meet different caps. All right. So in conclusion, what do I think about Diablo Immortal? Diablo Immortal is actually a decent game. If you consider it among the other mobile games, right? So for players that play pretty much heavily monetized mobile games like State of Survival, Genshin Impact, other things like that, Raid, Shadow Legends, whatever. What did I play before? I played like a bunch of these other Korean games too. This isn't really that different from those games. I think the thing I like about this game more is the fact that a lot of skills are pretty crisp. There's really few lag here. It does stand above those other games because, hey, it's a Diablo experience on the phone. So I think mostly that is delivered in this game. And sure, it's pretty small for a game, as in the world, the content is small. But that's also kind of understandable. It's a mobile game. I don't think I want 100 gigs of game data on my phone anyway. So that wouldn't really work. I think, again, highlight for this game is the combat system is really smooth. The gear drops are rewarding. If we're not talking about legendary gems, everything else feels about on par. The issue here is, I think most people, when they look at this game, they judge it against any other Blizzard game, which, remember, Blizzard isn't known for making mobile games. This is, in fact, their first one. So if you judge it against mobile games, non-mobile games, like their PC games, of course they're going to fall short, right? Now, could Blizzard make a good mobile game that's not heavily monetized? Probably. But I guess put it into perspective of somebody who's trying to make money, right? Why would they do that if all their competitors doing the same thing? Like, imagine if all of their competitors are just building games that are not heavily monetized, don't make people waste tons of money. Then they won't be doing this because they can't compete in that market. But since the market is full of this, they just look like anyone else, but they're like a better version of anyone else. So that's actually a plus, not a negative, right? It is pretty heavily pay to win, again, around the legendary gem system. But if you take the legendary gem system out of the game, I do think the game will be more fair. But Blizzard would earn a lot less money. So yeah, it's not going to happen, right? So I think in conclusion, this is what I would do. If you kind of like mobile games, or you want to have a mobile play anywhere experience of Diablo, yeah, not a bad idea. I think it's a fair game. This is one of those games you can truly like take 15 minutes here and there, take a break, make some real progress in the game, right? Kill a couple monsters, maybe find a legendary item, go out there, kill a, do a quest, etc., and find something. I like that part of it. But if you want a game that's like fair and it's like rewards skill, this isn't it for you, right? Yeah, and now I think I've been able to do pretty well so far in Battlegrounds and other content. But at the same time, I'm somebody who traditionally exploits systems of games, and so that makes it really challenging. But I will tell you right now, firsthand experience, I cannot beat a true whale in PvP at all, even with my skill. Look at my content for State of Survival, you'll see that there's only like one event that I can truly rank above all the whales, but even that gap has been closing since they found out about my strategy. Now, it's my fault for publishing said strategy, but still, there are very few content that I can do in mobile games that will allow me to be number one, right? In Diablo, there's no difference here. I mean, basically, you're not looking like you're gonna do rank 1 in anything unless you want to pay money. So that's fair. But if you want that like pocket Diablo experience, then I think this is a fine game. You could play it, you can enjoy it, and it'll be fine. So, anyways, that's my conclusion. That's the entire review for Diablo. I think this is probably a more extensive review than other things I've seen so far. I hope that's helpful for you to make a decision for yourself. And in reality, I also wish that this game was just not monetized, but let's just kind of face hard facts right now. I think people who are hoping or thinking that anything's going to change in this environment, they're just kind of like thinking too much. And look at the players. I mean, honestly, I haven't seen the game die. In fact, I've seen it become more popular in the last couple of days. And Diablo doesn't do what the other, like a lot of the war game systems do that kill off servers, which is they create a new server every, couple of days. Diablo doesn't do that. So like you have players joining your server that are fresh, that could literally be, let's say half a year from now they join, and they'll get up to where everyone else is level wise and maybe even gear wise within like, I don't know, a couple weeks, right? And that's not bad. That's not a bad thing at all. That keeps that server alive. And I'll tell you right now, as a mobile gamer, the thing that kills a lot of games is dead servers. And as the servers die, you'll notice that basically nobody's plays anymore. And guess what? All that progress you've put on the server, you can't transfer that to a different server. So that kind of sucks. So the fact that Blizzard hasn't done that, in my opinion, is actually really great. Imagine if the servers don't allow you to join and have Paragon levels. You can join, but you have to slow level your character up from beginning to end. That would be insane. In fact, that probably will make it so that nobody wants to play that game, right? So yeah, I think, Diablo Immortal, it's not a bad mobile game. I truly think that way. I think it's pay to win, and it's absolutely pay to win, and players should know about that, but it's not a bad mobile experience. So anyways, Masaki, I hope you guys have a great day. I hope this is helpful for the people who are maybe considering playing the game. So yeah, enjoy it and let me know how you think. Thanks.
I know she got the good vibes when seasons change, but where to say